Prime Minister Scott Morrison with Premier Stephen Marshall in February. Photo, Tony Lewis for InDaily. In the end, the results came in much more quickly than expected. Due to COVID and the general trend to postal voting, the results of the South Australian state election were not anticipated until at least the middle of next week. But about an hour and a half after polls had closed, the results indicated a brutal loss for Stephen Marshall's one-term Liberal government. This was expected to be a very tight election, most likely resulting in a hung parliament, with either side reliant on key independents. This, after all, has been a common pattern in South Australia. Going into the election, the picture was delicately balanced. Marshall's Liberals held 20 seats in the 47-seat chamber, while Peter Malinowskas' Labor Party held 19 seats, with 6 independents on the crossbench. The Marshall minority government was propped up by a number of those independents, including former Liberal and current Speaker of the House Dan Cregan in the seat of Cavill. However, the final polls and betting odds were indicating that a change of government was possible, perhaps even by a solid margin. By the end of Saturday evening, the extent of the loss was clear. Labor had already secured enough support to win 25 seats, with 24 needed to form a majority government. According to the ABC, there are still 9 seats in doubt. In what would be a truly remarkable outcome, Labor is predicted to finish with 28 seats. The Liberals reduced to 14, with a crossbench of 5. 2 key factors shaped the election result. First, as ABC election analyst Anthony Green put it, Nick Xenophon has had more impact on this election than the last one. In 2018, a resurgent SA Best, led by Xenophon, had secured strong support in key seats, with 15 to 20% of the vote in many marginals. What happened in South Australia this year is that a much higher proportion of those voters decided to support the Malinowskas challenge, showing a loss of faith in Marshall's government. Matt Turner, AAP. Second, the Liberals lost ground in those key suburban seats, especially those surrounding Adelaide. The key target marginal seats, including the ultra-marginal Newland, King and Elder, and Adelaide itself, all fell quickly to Labor. This pattern reflects a familiar structural problem for the Liberals in South Australia, where its support base has disproportionately been in rural and regional areas. However, the swing to Labor was enough this time to see them take Devonport, and potentially Gibson, which had previously been held by Liberals by relatively strong margins. What went wrong for Marshall? In his moving poem, The Mistake, the poet James Fenton reflects upon the agonies of hindsight. Given the surprising scale of Labor's win, we should caution against simplistic judgments about the result. But there are a range of factors that seemingly shaped the removal of Marshall's government. First, the Marshall campaign lacked bite. The general theme focused on a strong economy, but it lacked any memorable pledges on economic and fiscal policy. In 2018, Marshall had a set of policies around land tax, payroll tax, shopping hours deregulation, and reducing the cost of living through reductions in taxes such as the emergency services levy. It didn't help that Marshall couldn't deliver on some of these pledges. This time around, the Liberals' spending promises were modest, and its overall macroeconomic strategy was less clear. In contrast, Labor tapped into a public appetite for more significant infrastructure spending, crucially in the realm of health. The issue of hospital ramping has bedeviled South Australia for a long time, and it was an ongoing pressure point for the Liberals. Labor was cannily able to use the issue to build its campaign around new public funding in this area. AAP of Ben McMahon. The politics of COVID was also a likely factor. This was the first time an incumbent government had been ejected in an election since the pandemic. Yet, what's clear is voters are comfortable with ambitious spending policy agendas and new forms of stimulus. COVID has changed electoral dynamics, and Marshall's government paid a price for a reasonably well-handled approach to the pandemic. Implications for the federal election. Will the South Australia result impact the imminent federal election? Only indirectly. Australians tend to treat state and federal elections separately, and distinctive local and national factors shape the results of each. However, indirectly, the failure of the Marshall government is really a story about the fragmentation of the right in Australian politics. The absence of a strong Nationals presence in the state arguably throws out of balance the ideological differences within the Liberal Party. The fraying of the Liberals, and the inability of Marshall to keep factional balances and infighting in check, reflects a more general national trend for independents to challenge in non-Labor seats. Given the Marshall government delivered successful and progressive social reforms, not least the decriminalisation of abortion and introducing euthanasia legislation, it ironically reflects the structural failure of moderate liberalism in the country. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, a far more conservative-minded leader, and an electoral drag in South Australia, faces a sterner challenge in reconciling this fragmented politics. Near the end of his poem, Fenton intones the protagonist to lay claim to this mistake. Given the outgoing Premier's upbeat assessment of his single term of office, it might take a new generation to learn the lessons from this devastating loss. Rob Manwaring, Associate Professor, Politics and Public Policy, Flinders University. This article is republished from The Conversation under a Creative Commons license. Local news matters. Media diversity is under threat in Australia, nowhere more so than in South Australia. The state needs more than one voice to guide it forward, and you can help with a donation of any size to InDaily. Your contribution goes directly to helping our journalists uncover the facts. Please click below to help InDaily continue to uncover the facts. Donate today, powered by Press Patron.